those players. So pretty huge match there, going to be match number 3. But for now, we do have Pavel versus Kolento, double warrior ban, and then we are going to see the sorry, that threw me off then because the classes are in a different order. But we've got Hunter, Demon Hunter, and Rogue versus Hunter, Demon Hunter, and Rogue. But does anything stick out in terms of the deck lists for you, Sal?
Not hugely, no. It is pretty similar in terms of the matchups overall. Pavel is bringing a face hunter that we did play with a little bit in testing, where he's playing a copy of Augmented Porcupine in his deck, which is a little bit unusual based on what we've been seeing so far. He also has that one-off copy of Pack Tactics, which we see can potentially be a problem when you don't have the reliability that you do by just playing one secret with your Phase Stalker, but certainly does have some upsides as well. So I think the Face Hunter builds and the Face Hunter performance overall is something that I will be keeping a keen eye on as the day progresses.
Yeah, especially interesting because Kolento did actually bring Face Hunter last week as well. So he's been on the Face Hunter train a little bit earlier than most of the European Grandmasters. So maybe that's going to be some sort of edge of he's just put more hours into the deck overall. Other than that, he's bringing the Priestess of Fury build of Demon Hunter, as we can see. And then his Rogue looks to be fairly standard on just the 2 of and the secret.
Yeah, 2 ambush, 2 dirty tricks, 1 bamboozle make up his secret package. He is only playing 1 shadow step though, which I'm not sure if I can get on board with. That's a 2 of for me every day of the week. Also, Kolento just challenged me to a match on my spectator account, which I'm pretty sure is not the intended purpose. Kolento, try that one again.
Yeah.
So it just popped up on my screen. Kolento wants to duel. Oh, well, look, okay. I mean,
I'm okay to switching this up, and it'll become Raven and Sottle versus Kolento show match. I think that would be completely reasonable, and we could play that out.
Raven and Pavel cast Sottle versus Kolento. There you go.
I'm definitely okay with that outcome.
There you go, yeah.
However unlikely it would be to get Pavel in any form of preparedness to actually join and cast the game. But regardless, it'll be a fun one. I do think this one's going to be interesting, though, because both players not only bringing similar lineups with slightly different builds, but also is this just old school Hearthstone day today, Sottle? Because again, just 2 players who have been in the game for a very, very long time. And although people might go, Pavel, world champion, some of us go, Pavel versus life coach in that match. and that was actually a long time ago, right? That was before anyone even really knew who Pavel was, maybe outside of his region. So it was a big deal, much earlier than I think many people would recognize Pavel from. But he has also been playing from pretty much the beginning.
Yeah, and I go back even further than that. Pavel was a player who I just randomly played against in High Legend, even a year before that life coach incident, and just added to my friends list because I had a really sick game against him, and I thought he played really well, so I just kind of sent him the ad. He accepted, but his English was not particularly great back then, so it wasn't really much of a conversation. But he's just a player that stayed on my friends list ever since then. And literally, I just opened my friends list every day. I was playing Hearthstone. Pavel, rank 1 legend. Pavel, rank 3 legend. Pavel, rank 1 legend. And this is when ladder being like rank 1, top 10, top 5 was even more competitive than it is now. Like, it was just the thing. People really treated it with prestige to be rank 1 on ladder, and Pavel was just there all the time, even before he kind of had that big break, I guess you'll call it, in that infamous life coach series where most people came to know him. So yeah, he has been a top player for the longest possible time.
Yeah, it is pretty crazy just seeing that, that one person on your friends list that's like, rank 1, rank 3, rank 1, always up there. I mean, for me, it's Lorinda. He's just been up there at that top level legend very consistently over the past few weeks. I even tweeted out a screenshot. Tried to kick off between him and Crane, so we'll see how that continues.
I can't even run the risk that the Lorinda might get credit for anyone taking that serious. For some reason, there's a persistent bug with Lorinda's account where it duplicates exactly Crane's rank on multiple occasions. So multiple times, me and Raven have screenshot him being like, Lorinda, rank 4 legend, Lorinda, rank 1 legend, just because that's where Crane is at that time. I have no idea why that's happening, but we are very amused by it.
It is pretty great. I think the players are just getting 100% ready for this game. I will say it's not unlike Pavel to just not quite be ready for a game. That does seem to be his thing over the past few years. But in all honesty, what is the the deck that requires the win the most here, Sottle, in your opinion? Is it still the Rogue for you, or do you think this Face Hunter still got a lot to prove?
I think it is the Rogue. Yeah, I have a lot of faith in Face Hunter. I had a lot of faith in Face Hunter last week, as you'll know from us already being on that argument of Face versus Highlander. So I think Kolento bringing it last week was on point. I think he was maybe just a week ahead of the curve there. Although you can argue that if you bring something a week too early, you're still wrong, right? Like just because you were a week ahead doesn't necessarily mean you were in the right place. But I do still think it's the Rogue, particularly because that matchup against Face Hunter is a little bit sucky if you don't get a race going. And obviously the Demon Hunter matchup, since the lists have quickened up a little bit, has moved further towards the Demon Hunter. But having said that, there are Priestess of Fury builds in this series. So maybe that means that the Rogue will be able to put up more of a fight against the slightly slower build.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, as we do go into the game, and it is going to be a Hunter Mirror, is that Face Hunter did actually perform so well overall last week. Highlander Hunter had a much better go of it, but it is Face Hunter that everyone has gone to this week. And for Kolento specifically, I want to say at least in one of his series last week, Face Hunter was banned. So even though you can say, yeah, and I completely understand sometimes too early is just wrong and not ahead of the curve, well, if he gets a ban from it, that still does something in his lineup and allowed him to play Warrior and Demon Hunter, which for me is maybe the best victory Face Hunter got last week.
Right.
The fires of vengeance burn bright.
We are going to have a good old-fashioned Face Hunter mirror here. Both players off with pretty much the dream start with the Blazing Battle Mages. Both players have the Dwarven Sharpshooters to back that up as well, which is kind of the premium board control tool in the early game. So very evenly matched starts from these two players.
Yeah, and how often it is the case, really, not now, of course, but where the Dwarven Sharpshooter is both a turn 1 play and a weirdly turn 2 play with the coin. So you can use it as that sort of snap recovery where if there wasn't a Battle Master on one side, you can go save the Sharpshooter and then go Sharpshooter coin hero power to kill it off if you fight him for board that aggressively. Obviously, though, here, they kind of just bumped heads and then they're going to move on. But even having 2 1-3s here for Kolento with those double Sharpshooters means that it's just insane board presence because I'm not really sure what Hunter's supposed to do about the 3 health on these minions. It's kind of struggles.
Yeah, the problem is potentially that they just run straight into Eaglehorn Bow, which is a little bit miserable because they are very powerful tools in the matchup. It's a very weird matchup because obviously every card in your deck is highly tuned to go face. So you could make the argument that if you play a couple of 1-3s and your opponent swings their Eaglehorn Bow into it, that's 6 damage that your face wasn't taken. So that's a good thing, right? Well, not necessarily, because in the process of that happening, you might be losing board control. So if Pavel is able to consolidate a couple of minions that then attack a couple of times because of those Eaglehorn Bow swings, well, that actually makes up the damage race very, very quickly. So because both decks are so hyper-aggressive, sometimes neither deck actually gets to play aggressively.
Yeah, and one of the things that's very exciting about matchups like this is you are walking a tightrope. It's not like, say, a Priest matchup, Priest mirrors, it goes on for so long, decisions definitely do matter, of course, but it's more of sweeping decisions and overall plans. Whereas this is, if you just trade instead of going face, or go face instead of trade once, you might just lose because of it. So it's so like all the decisions just get compacted into just a few turns, and it is so intense that the first player to slip often is the player who takes the loss. So we'll see what happens as the Eaglehorn Warbow is going to be used from Pavel to kill off that Dwarven Sharpshooter.
That's the second time you've called it that in 2 days. It's not called that. I'm very confused. Is this like a WoW thing that's confusing you, making you call it a
what's that
warbow?
called what?
It's just called Eaglehorn Bow. You're calling it Eaglehorn Warbow.
Has it been used in wars?
This is what I'm asking. Like, you might have some like WoW knowledge that I'm not aware of that makes that correct. Like,
maybe I'm merging different things.
Yeah.
I feel like it should be called Eaglehorn Warbow. It's just like Seal of Fate, right?
I feel like it should be Seal of Fate.
Yeah. So, can we, guys, I know you're listening. Can we just change the name of the card, please? I don't know. I'm not even even realised I've done it. Anyway, the coin into the imprisoned Bell Warbow is going to be played. But it's going to go straight into the Phase Stalker, which after the Savages is a beefy boy in a 5/6.
Oh, and he does summon a Warbow trap from it. Oh, that's bad
He's drawn an
news.
explosive Warbow.
Seriously, it is explosive trap. Pavel does play the copy of Pack Tactics as well, so he could have got that option there, but he did get the explosive. Trade and Warden Sharpshooter. Looks like the line, yep.
Job done.
Toxic Reinforcements always feels like such a clunky card, because I don't want to use the word bad because it's clearly not bad, but in a matchup where you're fighting aggressively for board, you're trying to push some damage, spending 1 mana on nothing to a certain extent, and then just hero powering face with 2 more mana, it's like, wow, you spent 3 mana and didn't really affect the board in any way. And Kolento's still on 24 even after the explosive trap, so it feels very slow. It's almost like a dormant minion, right? In that the payoff comes a little bit later, but the payoff is pretty fantastic.
Yeah. That's one of the interesting quirks of this matchup, is that you can sort of just scam extra Eaglehorn bow charges off the guaranteed attack from the Imprisoned Felmore. Obviously, there was a trade that could happen there, but I think either way, Pavel was pretty comfortable with proceedings. If the 5/4 trades into the 2/1, well, the explosive trap is still there repping, so it can't. The 5 will not get to attack face afterwards.
And now I wonder if we're actually going to see the 1/1 not go into the Stormtrooper and actually go face instead, because it will mean that although it looks bad and because it can trade into the 5/2, it does mean that you do retain that targetable hero power, which is quite powerful in the matchup.
Yeah, you can just shoot the 2/1 though to preserve that instead, right?
It's true, yeah. Yep, I like it. I think no
it's
matter what
probably the
happened,
best way of
even if
doing
you
it.
wanted even if you wanted to go nutty aggressive, I think like this 1/1 is deceptively powerful right now.
Agreed. Ooh, that is a good draw.
It is, and I think what makes it even better is, well, Pavel doesn't have a lot of other stuff to even do. So the fact he has 2 1-drops, the explosive trap, and hero power to keep working towards his toxic reinforcement, looks fantastic to me. He might not play the 1-drops because it means it gives their minions something to trade into.
Exactly.
Kolento. So I wouldn't mind him holding them either, but most importantly, Pavel can hero power with quite the freedom this turn.
Yeah, so Hero Power puts him at 16, Explosive Trap puts him at 14, Hero Power again puts him at 12, 3 Leper Gnomes puts him at 6. He also has 2 Eaglehorn bow charges that he's going to get from the one that he has and the secret going off. What number did I come up with? 6? Ah, good. That sounds like 2 Eaglehorn bow charges to me. FaceTime. Pavel just has the race.
Unfortunately, Scrap Shot does not buff a beast on board. He's a beast in hand. Well, that would be insane.
There is no beast on board. That's a demon.
Oh, of course, yeah. Should be a beast.
Unfortunately, Scrapshot doesn't buff a demon on board, otherwise it would be insane.
Insanely bad sometimes.
Yeah.
Anyway, most importantly, Kolento has to work out how he's going to catch up and how he's going to utilize his mana here. The explosive trap, although good, we still have to consider that Kolento might be forced to swing even if this map isn't quickly. It's a weird one, right? Because the more you wait for the swing, more Pavel can actually just utilize his health difference.
Actually, the way Kolento's now setting this up, he does have potential counter-lethal if Pavel needs to keep swinging here, which he kind of does. Pavel needs to work out if he can skip swinging the bow this turn and still have a consistent lethal setup. Which I think is possible because he has Kill Command in his hand. So the 6 damage puts him down to 6. Yeah, he just needs the Kill Command and 1 bow swing. The Kill Command can substitute for the second bow swing I was talking about. So that then saves him 2 health from this explosive trap going off, except functionally it doesn't, because if Kolento can put you to 2, he can just do that and deny the weapon swing anyway.
But here he just sets it up, right? Is this just lethal?
Oh, is it just immediately?
This is lethal with Kill Command.
Okay,
because the explosive kills the Lepinomes. Yeah.
You are absolutely right.
I was looking, I was like, Saul is probably saying relatively important thing. I'm just going to see how many Lepinomes can get killed this turn. It's basically my level of thinking. Yeah, the and it's what I talked about earlier. Playing the quest, Toxic Reinforcement, and just pressing hero power feels so slow and clunky in such a cutthroat matchup. But you see the payoff when it does go off, and when you can hero power, it's so much extra damage. And I really think that the piece of the puzzle that just brought it all together for Pavel was that drawing of the explosive trap into the 5-2 and the 1-1 on board, because it just meant, great, I'll explosive trap, the 5-2 can't hurt me, there's no minion buff effects in the deck, so he knew that's always dead, and just hero power and wait. And then that's just extra steps towards the Lepinomes without having any of the pressure that normally comes with just hero power passing. So that turn was probably the one that really just got Pavel there. But obviously then 4 Lepinomes, explosive trap.
Yes, and in that case, like, obviously I completely blanked on the explosive trap interaction with the Leponome, but obviously in that case it looks a bit weird for Kolento to even play explosive trap, because he doesn't know about the additional Leponome, but he knows 3 Leponomes are getting summoned that turn.
Right.
But he has to play the explosive trap because he never has a 2-turn race without it. He doesn't get an extra Eaglehorn bow charge, which he kind of needs, and he doesn't get the 2 damage from the explosive trap, which I'm pretty sure he needed as well. So I think in that position, he just kind of had to take the risk that Pavel did not have the follow-up damage for lethal in hand, but he was miles behind just because Pavel was able to contest the early game efficiently, didn't fall behind, and then, as you said, just the timing of the quest alongside the timing of the explosive trap just meant that he just had so much extra in the damage race.
Yeah, really crazy. That mirror is so nuts. If you gain the health advantage, you're much more free to do whatever you want and really just force the selbs from your opponent. But Pavel taking the first game there over at Kolento in a very, very close Hunter mirror. We're going to be moving on with the rest of the series just after this short break. We'll be right back with some more Hearthstone Grandmasters. We are back and ready to continue our series between Pavel and Kolento. Pavel currently leading 1-0 off the back of a face hunter mirror that really got down to the wire there, but with the help of two of Pavel's mates, the Lepanomes, really just ended the game quite suddenly. But now there is Rogue and Demon Hunter left for Pavel, and then the full suite of Rogue, Demon Hunter, and Hunter for Kolento to take the series with. So still a lot to play for here, Sottle, but even just winning that mirror is going to be looking pretty nice for Pavel.
Yeah, it is. I would have expected Face Hunter to be getting a win in the series for both sides anyway. But of course, picking up a win in a mirror is obviously favorable for you, just in the simplest of terms. But I still think, Kolento having lost that it's not a huge loss for him in the context of Conquest, because I still think his Face Hunter is decently positioned to be able to get over the line somewhere.
Yep, I think it's pretty likely on my side of things as well. So like the players are getting into the game, I do believe we are going to see Rogue versus Demon Hunter here. So if Pavel can get a win with this Rogue, it's going to set himself up very, very nicely. Rogue has been performing quite well so far this weekend, but just getting the win there leaves him with Demon Hunter, which always feels very cozy as far as I'm concerned. So.
Yeah, I think it's tooting my own horn time, and perhaps retrospectively claiming back a hot takes point as well on the Rogue Sucks front, because I did bang the variance drum into the ground last week, and we had Lorinda check up on the stats for this week, and so far, mirrors excluded, Rogue is 9-2 across all regions, up to the end of APAC, which means that's actually improved, because it also went 1-0 in the TICE series, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yep. Good job, Sol. I'll
Thanks.
wait till next week when Rogue does bad again and be like, oh, well, not to toot my own horn, but I did speak about variance. As much as the deck can do bad, it can sometimes do good.
It's just Hearthstone 101, right? When the things happening that I don't agree with, it's variance. When the things happening that I do agree with, well, that's just reinforcing my belief.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How to be right 100% of the time.
Yep.
In the meantime, though, Pavel kept the Hanar and kept the tricks as well to pump this out pretty early along with the help of a backstab. Is this already beginning of the end, Sottle, with Hanar going into these secrets? Or maybe not now. Kolento has a choice.
And it's gone.
Should he kill it?
Yes.
Okay.
What do you mean?
Well, so honestly, right, it's a reasonable chunk of resources to kill a 1/5, and I think if people follow as many pro players as I follow on Twitter, which is quite a lot, I see a lot of people overemphasizing the threat of Hanar. And that can be interpreted multiple ways, i.e., well, Hanar plus a full board of secrets, how heavily do you respect it? Hanar being on an empty board, how heavily do you respect it? Because as much as Pavel coining it out might lead you to believe there's a secret there, it's also just a good card against Demon Hunter in terms of it's being a 1/5.
Yeah.
So it's a real question of, that was one half of a twin slice and an I-beam to go there, and I guess it was made easier in this instance because Kolento didn't have a minion to play instead of that, which meant that the turn probably looked a little bit easier to play. But I think it is a consideration.
So, really interesting turn on Kolento's side there as he just passes on 3 with Sator Overseer and Second Slice available. Obviously, the secret on the other side, the unknown factor, is the big kicker for Kolento. So, he could have just played the 4-2 to see if it was ambush. And then at that point, he had the opportunity to just leave it there as a 4-2 in consideration of Dirty Tricks. But he chose to go a different way where he plays it this turn off curve instead and just uses the natural attack to summon the extra 2-2, which means that he does not have to activate Dirty Tricks with his Second Slice.
Don't let the door hit you.
Yeah, pretty nice overall, and also just holding his Second Slice has other capabilities, especially going into turn 5 itself. Also just there with the Altruist too.
Yeah, I was curious whether he was going to pass all the way through to Warglaives and then play Warglaives on 5 and Sator Overseer after that.
Whoa! Pavel going to shadow set this Titanic Lackey to just bank it for the highest bound Togwaggle on 6. And although you may look at this and go, wait, you just make a Lackey with Shield of Galakron, right? Next turn, that's on curve. Yes, but then he couldn't play the Lackey and Togwaggle on turn 6. So although it looks a little bit inefficient, it just means Pavel can guarantee an earlier Togwaggle, which then guarantees an earlier one, and then so on, so on. Or, you know, whatever he chooses to measure. It looks a little bit weird just on surface level, but it does make sense.
It does. Kolento going to continue to play around the dirty tricks here by inefficiently attacking through that 2-4 taunt. Does, of course, have Second Slice available, which would have been much cleaner there.
And funnily enough, we can see that playing around dirty tricks this heavily, although might be right a portion of the time, it might actually hurt Kolento a little bit, because he is doing multiple turns that are significantly slower than he would normally do if there wasn't a secret there. And Pavel has card draw because he has Togwaggle and a Lackey, right? So he does have access to card draw, so it's not as if Kolento can starve him out for too long. The big question is, can Kolento, or has Kolento starved him out for long enough?
I think the answer is a very solid maybe, based on that Satyr Overseer, which is an absolute banger of a draw. Kolento was looking kind of starved before this point. Now he has a huge push. Battle Fiend and Satyr Overseer here if he wants it.
He could. And I am still recovering from that very solid maybe. It's not the most definitive thing you've ever said.
I grow impatient.
Pavel's response to this, if he does want to go ahead and play Togwaggle on curve, is pretty mediocre, honestly. It's just one backstab, taking care of the 4-2, which means a ton of damage is going to get left over.
Frustratingly enough as well, it's like the worst Lackey to have to empty play.
So, I wonder from Kolento's position whether this was the turn to activate the dirty tricks, because this is the turn that Pavel's quite clearly signaled he wants to play Togwaggle anyway. So the rest of the cards you draw him don't necessarily matter. So he could have played Second Slice and a Hero Power there to just one-shot through the 4-5 and then got the second piece of damage to connect face on top of that.
That's true. I don't want to overdo this, really, but he does still have Altruist in the Second Slice, which means that is the only problem he has is he doesn't have any follow-up spells, so maybe it was just worth practicing. The timing, I completely agree with you on. It was a fantastic time to use it. As you said, it doesn't really feed Pavel anything he wasn't going to do anyway. But I wonder if Kolento's just holding off for now. Oh, another one. What if he Second Slices now, the 1-1, and uses the 5-2 from the Battle Fiend buff to clear off the Tog, and then just drop Priestess of Fury and push with the rest? That looks really clean. And like you said, just as much giving him cards this turn wasn't great, well, he's probably going to play Wondrous Wand anyway next turn. Is two cards going to be enough?
I was counting lethal first and foremost, because it's really actually not that far off. When you consider he has Warglaives and he can attack into a bunch of stuff with each attack buffing the Battle Fiend, he's actually not that far off, but he doesn't have it. And so 19. It does look like Priestess of Fury is probably just the play.
My blades will sing.
Not Whoa, nice, giving up a lot of balls.
What?
Oh!
Okay.
I guess sometimes this happens.
Pavel needs the biggest scam here if he's going to find his way out of this, though. That's pretty big.
Effectively a free draw for the Galakron.
Yep.
You could use this Blackjack Stunner and Shadow Step it. Put the Battle Fiend and the Fury back.
Yeah, well, I'm curious. So you can Seal Fate the Battle Fiend anyway, and then obviously you Stunner the Priestess of Fury, which is unplayable. Or now with the Kobold Lackey, okay. So my thinking is that potentially you can have that Shadow Step for like a big swing after you play Galakron, if your Kronx is still alive.
Return is nigh.
Whether or not that's too greedy, I don't know.
The door hit you.
I think now with the Kobold Lackey, he might just be looking to step for a full clear. Although he's going to go Titanic instead, and I guess this does make actually quite a lot of sense.
I'm still surprised that it wasn't just a slightly bigger push turn for Kolento.
Sorry, what did you want? So I genuinely didn't hear what your suggestion was because I was counting lethal. What was your suggestion?
Second slice. Kill the 1/1 with the second slice attack. That puts the Battle Fiend to 5. Just put that into Tog, and then go face and drop the Fury. So you get the full 6 damage, and you keep like all of the 2/2s. Obviously, it's a bit weaker to flick, but that's it. And your opponent's just potentially played a 6 mana, kill some 2/2s, and you have a Priestess of Fury.
Okay.
And I think if the outcome is, well, what if he wands into flick into something to do with the Priestess of Fury? Well, unlucky. You know, is my answer to that outcome. I just thought it was a lot cleaner and kept way more minions on board.
So new question.
One.
Did Pavel not want to go face with his 5/1? Because now he doesn't have lethal set up.
Maybe too locked in on Galakond? Galakond does give you 5 armor. So 2/10 lethal setup does seem pretty good too. You could interest me in both of these things.
I grow impatient.
I guess it's scarier against Kayn. If you leave the extra minion up on board that can attack.
Ooh. Absolute craziness for the damage we see Demon Hunters tank with the Warclaves is absurd. As that is just a casual 12. That's going to be a casual Kobold Lackey to end the game and to propel Pavel to a 2-0 lead over Kolento. And it was an unlikely outcome there with the Fury leaving the Togwaggle alive, of course, as a 5/1. But it could have been a 0% chance, is my question. And there were multiple different ways he could have even just put an extra 2/2 in and said, it's just never dying. I'll take the guaranteed clear, the guaranteed damage to face in a slightly lesser fashion. But yeah, it's just a very interesting game there. And I think maybe Kolento could have just put Pavel in a couple of spots where there weren't crazy things to happen to give him an out. And it was more of just a steady, keep going game plan from Demon Hunter. I didn't think there was any need for a rush or anything overly fancy from Kolento there.
Yeah, it's possible. I have, questions from both sides there as well, because, you talk about the 5/1 and how he could have played around it differently. It ended up not really having an impact because the 5/1 just traded back into a 2/2 anyway, right? Which is kind of the same scenario. But then you ask the question of, like, did Pavel have to do that? Because then maybe he's like losing the race against Metamorphosis in that position, but he has Galakrond, which can pull him out of range of just bang bang with the Metamorphosis. Even before that, whether Kolento needed to pay quite as much respect to Dirty Tricks as he did throughout the game on a couple of turns as well, I think needs looking at. So I think definitely that was a game where some decisions either way from each player could have dramatically influenced the outcome.
That's why I love Hearthstone. A lot to talk about every game, honestly, or at least most games. Tons, especially at the moment, I do feel like the meta is very much just the small plays make big impacts right now.
But it is just another win for Rogue, which I believe puts it up to 11-2 now this week overall.
I cannot wait till next week. If Rogue does poorly, I'm going to be like, nah, Rogue lost again. Now Rogue's 1-5. just gonna
be my guest, score. Raven.
I never lie. But I never tell the truth. Job's done.
Kolento is going to use the backstab now, and a very deja vu style of the previous game, where Pavel did the exact same, but in the opposite side, of course, to Kolento.
Yeah, no I-Beam Twin Slice coming back at you this time. Umberwing is a pretty nice setup, though, just to be able to still have a good chance of dealing with it on the following turn with Chaos Strike, if need be.
Big questions, though. What is that Paladin's secret? It is Redemption, so he can actually make this very difficult for Pavel to deal with if that's what he assumes Pavel will do, and I think that's fair with the preemptive. Dirty Tricks looks the most reasonable to me.
Yeah, extremely spell-heavy deck. Demon Hunter, and you're aware they still have Coin as well. Snake Trap is a lot of board presence, though. And even Ice Barrier is a playable card against Demon Hunter if they get into the race scenario.
Yeah, they're all good secrets. I just think Dirty Tricks does the thing that Kolento needs it to do the quickest.
You certainly saw how many problems it caused Kolento in the previous game.
Yeah. Apparently, you just play Dirty Tricks, your opponent plays around it and then loses. So, you go for snakes.
This does mean, since there's no attack disruption secrets, that Pavel does still have the clear here. But of course, Pavel does not have that knowledge, and he has to commit to Chaos Strike, for example, to be able to get the full clear. So yeah, this is the Noble Sacrifice test, which he's failed. So now after he attacks into it, he's going to get punished by Redemption. But you just have no way of knowing.
Right.
There's also, of course, the Bamboozle check. Indeed.
And these are some of the points, Sol, where I've seen on more than one occasion pros talk about, oh, what do you do? Is Hanar just bait in terms of trading into it? Too many people focusing too much on it, too many people not playing around the secrets well enough. These are all decent questions, but questions I think that definitely don't have straightforward answers. Because
yeah, there's been a lot of like Sorry, go.
I was just gonna say, you are right on what you're gonna say, but it's hard to decide like when a secrets or Hanar not good enough to warrant killing or trying to.
Yeah.
And that's such a hard answer to just give as a one-off flat answer, right? It requires so much analysis.
But yeah, there's been a lot of screenshots posted of Hanar turns, essentially just saying, hey, everyone, what's the play here? And it generates like so much discussion because there's so many different routes you can take, and it certainly led to a lot of like interesting breaking down of certain situations. My personal favorite one was the one where Zixo said that everyone disagreeing with him was a psychopath, and then turned out his play was garbage because he couldn't count to 5.
Yes,
really enjoyed that
one.
one.
All psychopaths, Zixo. That is correct, sure.
I love me some Zixo. He's great.
Never Surrender. I always consider that card just because it's the one I've seen very consistently. Always have like a good outcome, right? Because I feel like the opponent always wants to play spells, especially in this matchup. So having extra health just makes these trading points horrible to deal with. Pack Tactics not too shabby either.
Don't let the door hit you.
I think we're at a point now where there's just a decent chunk of good secrets. Like, the newer secrets are all at least okay to go.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that assessment.
They will never catch me.
So Never Surrender Snake Trap currently in play, which makes casting Chaos Strike and attacking into a minion an absolute disaster.
Look how sick this is. Why is that stunner a 1/4 now? The payoff for the snakes?
Yep.
Again, not the secret personally I would have chosen, but you can see the value. Outside of an Altruist, this is a nightmare for Pavel.
Yeah, I like the snake there, personally. Ooh, Shadow Stare!
Yeah, with a stunner as well.
Big old Ed. No, this is our big old Edders.
Still want to still Shadow Step the stunner?
Nah. It's just a 2-1. Forget about it. Shadow Step your lackey instead.
I was thinking of doing the secret and actually bouncing the 2-1 back to Pavel.
Nope. I hate
that
it.
is what I was thinking, Sol.
Nope. It's just a 2-1. You can sacrifice a snake into it.
I think it's less that it's a 2-1. It's more it puts a really weird speed bump on his outcast hand, right?
I mean, I guess. It only costs 3, though. It's still playable.
3 on 5 mana. Yeah. It's more that I think, either way, Kolento's setting up to just very quickly end this game now. And honestly, pretty unbiased personally in this matchup. The only thing that's edging me towards not wanting Kolento to win is because I'll hear Sottle tell me that Rogue gets another win. There we go.
I was literally gearing up for it, and there it is!
I knew you were!
The best deck in the game, Raven! Oh, Galakron Rogue, the nuts, always the bring. Moving on up to 12-2 now in Grandmasters. What a deck, Raven. What a deck.
Look, I'm used to these shenanigans from you, Sol, but all I will say is I hope Galen's still asleep because not too long ago you were saying how much Zoo was the best deck ever created, and now you've easily flipped over to Rogue, and clearly your allegiance can be bought with win rate. Who would have thought?
But hang on, sorry, you're accusing someone of like saying that high win rate decks are good is a bad thing. That seems like a very weird stance to take, right?
You said best deck in the game. That was a statement from you.
Obviously, I'm trolling, and I never said that Zoo was the best deck in the game. Clearly, the actual best deck in the game is Warrior. Okay, clearly by a distance.
You were gonna just say Rogue. Just clearly, the best deck in the game is Rogue. Look at the win rate.
But I do just want to finally mop up that Shadow Step debate we were having. The reason why I think it was so essential, and I was just kind of trolling with being mean to you for no reason, but the reason why it was so important just to develop extra stats on board is because you are setting up lethal then the following turn with no additional damage. If you turn your 1/1 into a 3-attack minion, which I think is exactly what happened, you then represent exactly 20, which is more than just shadow stepping your guy, which makes it smaller as well. Don't forget, your Blackjack Stunner. You're actually taking damage off the board that way. So I think it was really important actually to do it the way that Kolento did, because he was just representing a straight up one-turn lethal that way.
Yep, can definitely see that happening. And we are going to be moving on to game number 4. It is going to be a Demon Hunter mirror. And just checking out the list overall. One of those, I feel, hasn't happened too often. Maybe just to the extent that Europe has jumped on the lower curve list. But Pavel and Kolento are both running the Priestess of Fury list. So we are going to see just a bit of a slightly slower, slightly clunkier matchup, as opposed to the sort of ruthless, crazy early game based around sidekicks we normally see, and instead just see maybe a game of who lands the first Priestess.
Yeah, and you can already see that Pavel has drawn the Beyonce hand that's possible with this build of the deck, because very soon his Skull of Gul'dan is just going to get locked up in a box to the left behind that Priestess of Fury and be unplayable.
How long you been waiting to pull that one out of the bag?
I thought of it last night. I thought of it last night. Honestly,
so, yeah.
Honestly,
that was not an off the top of the head.
No, it wasn't. No, it's good though, right?
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
Okay.
I was wondering how you were going to work, should have put a ring on it into this hand. I was like, what? How is he going to... I know Sol likes this kind of wordplay, but how is he going to get there?
Oh, you've blown it. That's for the Zoo matchup, the Hand of Gul'dan. You can just say, well, if he wants to draw his hand, he should have put a ring on it.
There we go.
Yeah.
As always, when our powers combine. Yeah. Kolento, in the meantime, just this Crimson Sigil runner. I don't even know what he could go for. He's just a response of an Umber Wing, the best draw he could probably get here.
Yeah. On a serious note, on the Priestess of Fury build, though, I made the point yesterday that I do think the players have a point this week who've chosen to bring Priestess of Fury. Now, don't get me wrong, I think the faster build is just better, and you should be kind of leaning towards it almost regardless of metagame, but I would sit and listen to the argument and nod politely if someone told me that they were expecting some slower, more control-y builds of control decks this week, and therefore felt like having Priestess of Fury and more ability to go late with bigger cards was something that they wanted to do with their Demon Hunter this week. Yep.
Does make sense. If you told me you can bring Priestess of Fury because you'll get to play it every game, I'd be like, sweet, yeah, okay, it's probably pretty good. I think that's the biggest thing, if you're not allowed to get to that late game. Although with the Satyr and a heavy focus on bow control here, even just having the backup of that Skull of Gul'dan, although as you mentioned, won't be active super early, or even on curve, Pavel is only a Fell Screamer away, altering the course of the future there. Just being able to get this Priestess of Fury out relatively early to line up that Skull of Gul'dan quite nice. Who knows, maybe Skull just becomes more playable from the right side, actually, turn 7. Altruist turn here, very nicely just using that Twin Slice, not the craziest Altruist I've ever seen, but a pretty impactful one actually. Clearing up the board here, utilizing the Twin Slice and setting Kolento up for the follow-up. Well, Dr. Skull of Gul'dan.
Yeah.
That's something. And this is a good example as to why the deck isn't overly favored across the board or across the pro scene. Because sometimes this happens and you get a little bit upset.
You do. So Kolento's Panic Button Altruist last turn did lock out his Gladebound Adept for this turn, but I think it's very justified. I think if Kolento just sat back and started tanking that damage from Pavel's board on the previous turn, then Gladebound would have probably ended up just being too slow anyway. But it does mean his turn is now a little bit awkward.
It is, but he always had the Kane hero power backup anyway. So even if this didn't line up as well as it does this turn, he had something decent to do because he couldn't Gladebound Adept this turn. So I think, again, I'm with you. Very justified. Did the job he needed to do. Has a slight rough turn, this one, but definitely not the worst.
Never catch me.
Hand's not quite Pavel's hand, is it? So, doing okay.
No.
I think I still just like the Kane here. It's one of the almost rarities, less so in this deck, this version of Demon Hunter. But the 5 health on Kane feels huge in Demon Hunter. Because I feel like everything just has 2, and then Kane's just there like, hey, I'm a pretty buff.
Hey, Pavel, would you like to top deck Skull of Gul'dan next turn? Seems pretty good. If there was ever something that could fix this hand, it's just top decking another Skull on 6.
Yeah, weird thing to say. There's another thing that can fix his hand. It's the other highest cost card in his deck.
Yeah.
It's like...
He's still just so far behind the play, though. There's 3 more damage potentially this turn. There's a Gladebound Adept to follow that up with a hero power.
And even the Gladebound Adept to just kill off this 3-2, although it's overkill, is more than warranted here. Look how safe his board is. I was talking about low health minions of Demon Hunter. Well, suddenly there's a 4 health and 3 health on the board for Kolento, and not a lot Pavel can really do about it right now.
No. Pavel needs I-beams, and he needs them in the middle, not on the outcast draw. Doesn't find it.
I yield for now.
Just gonna hit the concede there, Kolento. They even this series up, and the amount of discussion we've had over the past few weeks about Demon Hunter. If you've not had a chance to watch every single hour of Hearthstone, which one, shame on you, but 2, actually, fair enough. You will see that was just a quite obvious display of one of the issues with the slower build of the Fell Screamer and the Furies, right? Because you can draw them early, and you cannot draw a Fell Screamer, in which you just sat with a 7-drop in your hand. And there's, in a lot of the meta, right as it is today, it's very aggressive, and you can't just have an unplayable in hand for most of the game. It just doesn't work with Demon Hunter.
Yeah, for sure. I guess the silver lining there is that if both of you are playing the Priestess of Fury build, well, at least one of you has to win, right? It doesn't have too much of an impact on the stats overall. But yeah, Pavel's hand was completely miserable. Not only did his Skull of Gul'dan start the game locked from the left-hand side, but then the other Priestess of Fury came in to lock it out from the right-hand side as well. And even that top deck Skull of Gul'dan was not going to be good enough because he took too much damage in the early game with his slower hand, and then just couldn't find his way out of it. I was talking about I-beams being even in the right spot, so they cost 0 and not 1. But even then, there's still just a freaking Gladebound Adept that gets to hit him again, coming back the other turn. Like, it just probably wasn't going to be good enough.
Yeah, I think the issue there was the Skull couldn't have realistically got Pavel both an answer to survive that turn and a way to progress the next turn, right? It would have been like, Priestess of Fury, and hope 6 damage is 1,000,000 for some reason. So yeah, it would have been very, very tough indeed. But Pavel gets to play his Demon Hunter once again, and Kolento has his Ace Hunter to go up against that now. So we get to see more of what I feel is quickly becoming a staple matchup. Maybe that changes after the upcoming patch, maybe not. But it really is just one of those ones with Warrior, a very consistent ban, because both of these decks don't really want to see Warrior. It means that we might see this in the future as well, just continue to butt heads with the Hunter and the Demon Hunter. So we'll see how it plays out. It's a matchup I'm very interested in, honestly, Sol, from both sides.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's the discrepancy in the quality of minions between the two decks is so obvious that you just feel like Demon Hunter should just get so far ahead so quickly just because they're playing high-quality minions and the opponents are playing like a Worgen Infiltrator and a Leponome, Like, You're going to get outvalued super quickly. You're going to get out-tempoed super quickly in the early game. But you'll be surprised at just how competitive Face Hunter can stay for just a little bit longer than you might expect. And then if they can find that inevitability from toxic reinforcements, they can buy extra turns with explosive trap. I think that is, more than capable of winning the matchup from the Hunter side, sorry. And as I say that, Kolento just basically full keeps the kind of hand I was talking about. Arcane Shot just to preserve the board for a few extra turns, Phase Stalker to find his explosive trap, and the side quest for the inevitability.
Yeah, and on the other side here for Pavel, his hand looks fantastic as well. As an I-Beam, the Umber Wing, the Battle Mage on 1 means he can start being competitive on board straight away. Twin Slice with Altruis and Coin. Not that there's a great need for sweeping AoE damage normally in this matchup from Demon Hunter, but it's there. One thing I will say that does interest me is just further builds of Demon Hunter, because if this does become common and Face Hunter just becomes a staple, then Demon Hunter has access to a 3/6 taunt with lifesteal, Sottle, if it wants to. And is that just a card that might even see play, especially with the upcoming nerf on Fury? If people want to play a slower list, do they look at something a bit more taunt-based?
It's a 3/5, right? It's not a 3/6.
A 3/5, sorry, 3/5.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say, hang on, that card sounds good. Why are we not playing that card? I'm pretty sure it's a 3/5. I mean, possibly. It's kind of a very, very mediocre card overall. I think you do need to have like the right spot to see it come out. And I think with the way that the nerfs are going, I don't think the meta's getting more aggressive after the patch that's coming in. I think it's getting less aggressive, if anything. So I'd be surprised to see that one come out.
Okay, well, I'm going to try and make it work.
Hide behind your servants. I will still.
Pavel now going to drop down the Kane Sun Fury here and start putting on some pressure of his own. And this is a worrying spot you always have to, at least not always, but you are just often unhappy with as Hunter, is when your opponent's just beating you up on board. Sounds a little bit weird because Hunter isn't normally that competitive minion based, but still, you don't want to be getting punched down by Demon Hunter right now.
Kolento hit the pack tactics, which I would argue is actually probably the one he wanted in that spot. Explosive Trap just really didn't do anything. Getting the extra 3/3 in play, probably from his perspective, seems pretty good, but we can see that Altruis that Raven was talking about actually is going to have a pretty significant impact. It is very rare, but in this case, pretty strong.
Yeah, and even just having this I-Beam for Pavel makes this kind of play just much more secure. Look at the follow-up. He has Warglaves of Azeroth to plus more damage, or has an emergency just I-Beam plus whatever card he might draw next turn, if playable, of course.
Right.
Looking really strong, and Kolento just using Scrap Shot to Stone to score or Battle Master this turn. Although reasonable, I don't know if reasonable is actually good enough at this point.
Agreed. Maybe he can race a no I-Beam hand, but it feels like he's going to fall spectacularly short once this I-Beam comes into play.
I think for me as well, Soto, it's actually I-Beam trade with the Kane. And then just set up this Battle Fiend.
Curious as whether it needed to be I-Beam this turn. Can Pavel just race effectively while leaving the 4/4 up and use the I-Beam as a breakpoint? I don't think he can. It seems safe.
What if he actually, what if he tanks this actually and then pushes 3? Does that actually set up
He would be at 11 instead of 13. There's 5, 10. No.
Oh, no, it'd be 1 off, right? Okay.
You can't use both hero powers. It'd be lethal if you could use both hero powers, but you can't.
Makes sense. I just think it was worth checking because it, we are very close, of course. Would change quite dramatically whether it's worth tanking the damage.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing I was looking at as well, where I was in the, well, what if we just ignore the ball this turn and just like play the Metamorphosis this turn and go face, you know?
Yeah, I think the difference was there. The I-Beam just made it that Pavel's never dying from 17 this turn, right? Not in a million years, so pretty safe overall. The Explosive Trap is going to get the work done, but honestly, with meta, Hero Power, and then Hero Power and Warglaves next turn, that just adds up to 13 to me, Subtle. So Pavel doesn't even have to proc this trap.
Well, he does.
Okay, he doesn't have to proc his trap this turn.
Exactly. Which means Kolento has to do 13 damage here.
And most importantly, the not proccing the trap this turn stops Kolento drawing and playing another one, right? Which would change things also.
Good start, but the follow-up is just not there, unfortunately. As long as Pavel has at least 3 health to play with this turn, he's going to win this series.
And yeah, my maths looks like that does not be total 3. It totals 9, which means Pavel can happily tank this explosive trap damage and win this series. A close one there between Pavel and Kolento. Pavel's got ED picked at 3-2 as he gets a win on the board, and a fairly respectable 2-2 so far in his division after playing the full 2 matches each week.
Yeah, it looks like Kolento is going to suffer his first loss here, but he'll still be pretty happy with his week and a half's work up until this point, I would imagine. Still off to a 2-1 start from his proceedings, so yeah. Decent stuff all around. Pretty interesting series, honestly. A lot of aggro mirrors going back and forth, and a lot of, I would almost classify the way that Rogue plays against aggro as an aggro mirror, because Rogue doesn't play as the control deck in those matchups, really. They just try and counter race in a lot of spots. So I think that predominantly that's what we saw this series, and I do find a lot of those very, very interesting because there's a lot of small details in when and where to activate the race that you have to pay attention to. And I think a lot of questions from both players' sides, honestly, in the way that series was played out.
Yeah, and speaking of questions as well, it's a true test of our casting when we get matchups like this, because it is often so fast with so many very intricate and niche things to discuss. It's actually hard to get across all the different points and outcomes. So it is always fun in that respect. We don't really have all the time in the world to talk about the outcomes and impacts of small plays. Let's check out the schedule for the day as we are moving swiftly through with our match 2 now done. We do have match 3 coming right up. And it honestly, Sol, for me, although I'm looking forward to Silvername versus Huntress, of course, this matchup we've got coming up, I think is going to be the spicy one for today. I am very excited to watch these two players hash it out.
Yeah, very much agreed. I think there is a ton on the line already, just as early as week 2 here in the round robin stage. As we mentioned earlier, Viper can all but lock himself into a playoff spot by being the first player worldwide to go out to a 4-0 record in the round robin. Casey on the absolute other side of that coin, where he has been struggling, and he's really been kind of showing it as well with, saying that he's potentially not in the best headspace, and also just kind of letting it show through in his play last week, which was also pretty disappointing. So he really needs to square himself up again, and I don't think this is a series he can afford to lose.
And me neither, because I think right now,